All right, folks, we are back with Garza, Gaitan, and the game. This week, we're going to be analyzing the game in politics. We have a lot to cover on a very interesting topic that a lot of folks have been analyzing. But before we get started, we want to encourage everybody to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter as well. Daniel, how's it going? Are you ready for the weekend?
Ready for the weekend, man. Tell you that immigration game is getting hot.
It's really getting hot. There's a lot of details. There's a lot of plays to go by. And we're going to be talking specifically about the case of Salvadorian Kilmer Garcia. I believe I pronounced his first name correctly. But yeah, Kilmer Garcia. But there's a lot of nuances. There's a lot of details. I want to go a little bit into those nuances and details of the case. And then I want to talk a little bit about the politics of it, because yesterday, this week, we saw a senator from Maryland, my home state of Maryland, go announce that he was going to El Salvador to meet with Garcia. So I think both parties are defending their side. And I want to talk a little bit about the politics. Who's kind of picking the right person to support? Who's kind of showing the community here in the U.S. that they're supporting the right people or not? So I do want to dive into that. But Daniel, I want to start a little bit by talking about the fact, or stressing the fact, that I genuinely believe that in the United States, the majority of Americans are both pro-immigration, pro-immigrant, and they are also pro-border security and the rule of law. At a time where it seems like you have to pick a side, at a time where sometimes if you watch the media, or if you're on one channel on social media, it sounds like you got to pick a side. But the reality is we can both be, and I think the most Americans are, pro the fact that the United States has a history of welcoming immigrants through our legal channels, but at the same time that we can say no to the chaos that we saw the last 4 years of open borders. We can be both. Do you hold a similar sentiment in that space?
I do, very much so, Wadi. There's no question that immigration has strengthened America, that people bring their industry, bring their talents, their skills to leverage in the marketplace here in America, where they're free to do so, where there is spontaneous order. You don't have to tell them what jobs to do. They find them, right? They find those, wherever there are inadequacies in the marketplace, and they fill those roles. Immigrants have done this over the arc of history and will continue to do so. But it's important that we allow those who come to fulfill the American dream, to strengthen America, and keep those out that would do us harm. It's very important.
Yeah, 100%. And also, look, there's a lot of emotions around this case. There are a lot of people who believe there's been an immense injustice done against Garcia. And there's a lot of people who believe that what has been done is good, that we need this. They're seeing the application of the law when they saw lawlessness in the last few years. So there's a lot of emotion behind this. And I would hope that a lot of that emotion, we would be reminded that we are here today in 2025 in situations like this and in others because a lack of action from both Democrats and Republicans, presidents on both sides, Congresses and majorities on both sides, who have failed to truly address border security, legal immigration, the undocumented community. So let's use some of that emotion, I think, towards this space as well. I think you would agree with me on that, Daniel.
I would. I mean, and to be fair, there are extremes on both sides too on this issue, right? And one extreme on the right says that all immigrants are criminals who come to do America harm, to change the American way. And then the other side on the left thinks that all immigrants are valedictorians, are all Albert Einsteins, and it's not, right? Neither one is true. Immigrants, of course, there's bad apples in every batch, in every group of, human society. There are going to be those that are going to operate beyond the borders of what is legal or ethical. Just like there are American citizens who operate in that way too, right? But then there are those who, again, come to create value for others, to bring their industry to bear. And so, yeah, you have extremes on both sides, and those extremes, unfortunately, are the ones that have been getting the attention, and that's what this sort of gridlock on immigration.
Yeah, that's spot on. Sometimes they're the loudest voices, and that's why they might seem like the majority, but very much, many of the times, they are not. But Daniel, this topic has been going on almost for 2 weeks, but I think this week it was brought front and center because President of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, was here at the White House meeting with President Trump, probably talking a wide range of topics. But again, the topic of Garcia, who is an undocumented immigrant. He is a citizen of El Salvador, was really brought to the spotlight. Many reporters asking Nayib Bukele if he was going to send back the citizen of El Salvador to the United States. And some folks asking Trump if he was going to facilitate what they said. The court used the word facilitate, where there are various interpretations, but if he was going to facilitate this. What is your analysis of this interaction between President Trump and President Bukele on this topic specifically?
Well, I mean, it seems to me that here both of these leaders are making a common sense case that coming to America is a privilege, in the sense that obviously you need prior authorization and you need to meet a certain criteria to come and join either family members, to come and work, to be a resident of the United States of America. Garcia didn't do that. He didn't get the prior authorization and didn't, wasn't ceded that privilege. He took it. And, by entering the country illegally, not only did he enter the country illegally, he abused that privilege by committing crimes, by being a criminal. And so basically what America is doing is just to return this person back to his country of origin, where he was born and where he's a citizen of. And he was received by the leader of that country, right? And treated thus with the due respect that he's earned, which is a criminal will go to jail because he has to be separated from society. You've abused your right to live amongst people who want to live in peace, who tolerate others, who respect the livelihood and the property and the life of others. And so what's the argument here? You have Chris Van Hollen, who's the senator of Maryland, who now goes through extraordinary lengths to retrieve this person and put him back in Maryland to continue his criminal ways. It boggles the mind. And I think this is a reflection, Wadi, of really current Democrat priorities, right? A projection of who they think they should be considering and attending to. Not citizens, not the working class, not our youth or women, by the way, who he beat, his wife. No, a wife-beating, human smuggling, drug-pushing gangster. They think this is who we are as Latinos. And so if I can go and retrieve this person and advocate on his behalf, I'm really by proxy advocating for the Latino community. The hell you are. This person has abused his standing in America. In fact, he's exploited Latinos. He's made victims of Latinos in his community and throttled his own family in violence. I reject this person and as a society and should stay in El Salvador. So, I mean, it may be strong what I'm saying, but those are the facts.
Let me ask you a little bit on the politics. We'll come back to the details of this case, but you mentioned, Senator Chris Van Hollen. Look, on this podcast, we've talked a lot about Democrats sort of trying to find their footing. Everyone from like Newsom trying to start a podcast. So there was this Schumer trying to do these press conferences across the country, but they weren't really playing out. Tim Walz, same thing, trying to do these events, but not really. They're finding their footing, and it's not really playing out for them. Chris Van Hollen, I think, saw this as an opportunity, but you mentioned the fact that this most likely is falling flat because of who they're advocating for. How do you measure this? How do you analyze, or what's your analysis on what he's doing? What's the long-term impact for Democrats who are really trying to find their footing at a moment where it seems like a lot of people voted for President Trump on the issue of immigration?
Yeah. You've heard of the concept of white savior, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is white savior to the nth degree, right? This is guy, slumming it with criminal gangsters, being the good guy, who's out to retrieve and redeem this person and join him or rejoin him back to with his family, advocating for the little guy. He has arrest records. He was found when he was arrested to have drugs in his possession. He bears the marks of gang membership. an incredible amount, is in America as an undocumented immigrant to do wrong. I mean, there are folks who are undocumented and are good, decent people who are industrious and who are, working hard to make life better for their family. That's not this guy. Van Hollen is not advocating here on behalf of the Latino community. You're advocating on behalf of a criminal, an undocumented gangster, right? He hasn't. He's not even spoken to the family who lost their daughter in Maryland to violence, but will go to El Salvador. Meanwhile, Wadi, Latino Marylanders are deficient in educational attainment, more than twice the rate of incarceration, 2.5, more than their white counterparts. Broken promises on immigration, as we were talking about, due to people like Chris Van Hollen, who won't step up and operate in good faith and talk in good faith with negotiate with Republicans. Marylander Latinos, twice the poverty rate of their white counterparts. Latina women make half of what their white counterparts do. But Van Hollen is in El Salvador, and that's what I mean about this is emblematic of the Democrat Party right now. In their twisted, weak attempts to try to show that they are advocating on behalf of the Latino community, they just picked the wrong cases to do it with, right? This is the wrong person. I'm not going to defend Garcia. I'm not going to stand by the man who is a criminal exploiting other Latinos and not creating value in his part, part of America. I just won't do it. But this man thinks that if he does that, by extension, he's looking out on our behalf. You're not.
Yeah.
I think you're weakening society. These are the kind of things that create decline in society, which is to be soft on crime, to advocate on behalf of the criminals instead of bringing justice to the victims, and not honoring and upholding the rule of law, justice, things like that, that have made America strong.
I think part of their attempt, alongside what you just mentioned, I think is trying to sort of stick it to Donald Trump, to show him you're wrong. You need to bring him back. You need to retract your errors. And I think, look, what's interesting about this case, and I've tried to do some research on it, is a lot of what the media and Democrats are grabbing onto is that years back, he did have a withholding order. In other words, a court judge did say that he should not be sent back to El Salvador because of the rival gang, La Mara.
Hold on, let me stop you right there. You said rival gang, right? Which, of course, is an admission that he's part of a gang. If you have a rival gang that doesn't like what the competition, or that you're muscling into his territory, well, sure, of course, that's exactly what's going to happen. But that's the problem. You're a gangster who's now in danger. You've put your life in danger because you've taken on the rival gang. That is an admission of being a gang member. Why in the world are you protecting?
I think, in all fairness, I'm not sure if the judge said rival gang. I just said rival gang, but I know because of the gang M18, which is the rival of MS-13. But your point, I think, carries the weight on. I do want to be sort of fair in that sense, that I'm not sort of 100% sure that the judge said it, but it is the rival gang of MS-13. But many Democrats
but you're correct in saying that his life was in danger due to a rival,
yes,
right?
Correct, 100%. And
which, of course, by implication means that you are in competition with that gang.
Involved in some sort of the way against them. So then the Democrats are holding on to that fact that, hey, he shouldn't have been sent back because, again, there was this withholding order. But I think the administration this week has made an emphasis that's saying that, one, because MS-13 now, because prior they weren't, but they now have been placed as a terrorist organization, the administration holds the right to go above that withholding order. In other words, they have and carry the jurisdiction to say that we won't recognize that withholding order because this person is a criminal. Second, there is Bukele and the Salvadorian government has very much talked about how the Mara 18, the M18 gang, does not have the pull, and they are not on the streets the way they were before. In other words, saying that he can go back to El Salvador. There is a place for him in El Salvador. Matter of fact, going back to the meeting of Senator Van Hollen, who did meet with him with Garcia, Bukele tweeted out some pictures saying, look, he's sort of risen from this torture camp that everyone is saying, but guess what? He will stay in his home country of El Salvador. These details and these nuances are important because people are holding on to these small details. They're holding on to the fact that his wife is now saying that no, that she accepted him back home, that they've reconciled. That does not negate the fact that he did abuse her. It does not negate the fact that there was a restraining order against him. She might have forgiven him, but it doesn't still place him as someone who has a record of actions that are illegal in the United States. It is illegal to beat your wife. It is considered domestic violence. These are all facts that the administration is holding on to. My understanding is they're actually going to be rolling out more information that they have on him. But at the end of the day, to me, a lot of this is kind of clear cut. Even if he didn't have a criminal record, even if he didn't have all these things, I know we'd be having a different discussion, but even if he didn't have all that, he's still in the country undocumented. And the U.S. government is saying he does not have the permission to be here. He is actually right now back home in his citizenship country of El Salvador. What are your thoughts a little bit on these nuances?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. He has circumvented the law, if not violated, law by entering the country without prior authorization. And then while he remained here, he abused that standing or his presence here in America by violating our laws. And this is not, Senator Van Hollen, protecting the vulnerable. This is endangering the vulnerable American citizens. This is an abdication of your primary responsibilities to protect your homeland, to secure the freedoms and the safety of citizens. And what you're doing is actually undermining that responsibility. And this is emblematic, again, of the Democrat Party right now. Wadi, their focus right now is helping or advocating on behalf and promoting that the undocumented be allowed to vote in our elections, that undocumented criminal gangsters be saved from deportations, that biological boys wanting to undress in girls' locker rooms be allowed to do so and compete against girls, even if it's against their safety, physical safety. Hamas supporting immigrants who hate America. That's who they're representing right now. Subversives, agitators, and troublemakers in our universities are being protected by the Democrat Party. They are defending the spending waste, the bureaucrats in our government agencies allocating billions of our dollars in insane studies and projects that make absolutely no damn sense just to push their agenda and to also launder money for their side. They are defending the spending waste again that Doge has exposed here. Just an insane amount of money. The universities that practice acceptance discrimination, choosing one side over the other, picking winners and losers based entirely on race, and allow anti-Semites to run rampant, right, on their campuses and remain silent about it, while Jewish students are corralled in corners, are corralled in rooms or blockaded, are intimidated from going to classes. Unions who only seek to grow administrative jobs in our schools, but care nothing about the educational attainment of our kids, and on and on. It's like every time you pick the wrong side, you pick the side that is exploiting Americans, that is abusing, our taxpayer dollars, that is, holding our most vulnerable groups, in terror. It's like, again, this is not protecting the vulnerable. This is endangering the vulnerable. That's, I think, what's the frustrating part that, that Americans are feeling, and why the favorability of Democrats is just at an all-time low.
It's at an all-time low, and I think it will continue to go low if they continue down this path. They're really going to have to find and learn their lesson in this space. It doesn't really seem that they're doing so, with the exception of maybe one or two members that are probably more quiet when it comes to this area. It's something that Democrats, I don't see how they're going to get out of it or how they're going to sort of learn that lesson, but it's something that they're very much going to have to do. Well, Daniel, that has been our episode, a big focus on this case. We'll probably continue to have this conversation. Immigration is a big topic this year. We're going to continue to see what other reforms that are coming out of Congress. We're hearing that, Donald Trump has talked about a farm worker visa program. No specifics on it necessarily yet, but we're going to continue to follow that and report on it as the time goes by. So again, folks, thank you for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and follow us on our socials. Talk to you guys next time.